Hello and welcome to another SSCAIT broadcast. Today I will be your host, Chobo Swaggins, aka Jealous on Team Liquid, and today we'll be going through some recommended replays from the SSCAIT Discord, as well as a few of my personal selections from the Schnell ladder. But first, I want to again remind you about the AIST Season 4 show match, which will be broadcast soon, date still to be determined. I will be playing a best of 7 against Stardust this week and submitting the replays in the next few days. The bot author, Bruce, has modified the bot, and according to the AIST organizer, Antigua Irion, the bot files have increased in size by 1/3, so there may be some surprises in store for me, and I hope you all tune in and enjoy. More information about the broadcast will be in our Discord channel, the link for which you can find in the description below. Without further ado, let's jump into the games. So this is a replay submitted by McRave, who was trying to demonstrate the effectiveness of 2-hatch Mutalisk against Iron, which we can see here as the white Terran on the right hand side of Heartbreak Ridge, McRave of course being the teal Zerg on the left hand side. Now 2-hatch Muta is a build that has been waxing and waning in popularity throughout the history of Brood War. It is a little bit more all-in than a standard 3-hatch Mutalisk build because of the fact that you rely so heavily on being able to utilize the Mutalisk to do damage to make up for the fact that your own economy is quite weak. It's a very tight build order. It has to hit a very nice timing before the Terran has sufficient anti-air defense. And the Terran in exchange has to react very well as too, because to recognize the fact that it is a 2-hatch Mutalisk instead of a 3-hatch Mutalisk, the 2-hatch Muta is arriving approximately, I believe, 30 to 45 seconds earlier than the standard 3-hatch Mutalisk play. This was very popular in around the 2009, 2010, and 11 years of Kespa. It was definitely used as a main build and also as a one-off build, and it has had some resurgence in popularity more recently, along with its variations such as 2.5 hatch Mutalisk, which is used against the 1-1-1 build from Terran, which is 1 barracks, 1 factory, 1 starport. But let's focus on this game in particular. We see an Overlord Scout by McRave inside Iron's base. I'm not sure about being this ambitious with it. There are Marines out already, and unfortunately the Marines don't seem to be too interested in attacking this Overlord. There is some SCV shenanigans here as well, perhaps anticipating some Zergling aggression. SCVs, quite a number of them outside the wall as well. I think that this might be a slightly inefficient. You lose 2 of your early workers when you're only at 18. That's 1/9 of your potential income units being not really achieving much. It is keeping a good tab on the natural of McRave. The Zerglings were blocking scouting information as well. The Sunken Colony now will prevent any further scouting and will defend against this Vulture opening from Iron. So this is indeed looking like a mech opening from Ironbot with 2 factories here. We do have the Vulture now. It is being kept out by this Sunken Placement. The Sunken Placement is basically ideal in this situation. The one concern is when Vulture counts rise and if speed is upgraded, which reminds me to bring this little interesting menu up. Yes, okay, so we do have a run by here, but the Zerglings, great block around the ramp there, preventing the Vultures from running, and this is very great play from McRave. It's incredibly important to keep these Vultures away. However, the Vulture did have the potential to park up here and attack the drones, I believe. The Zerglings would have had to try to attack it, and then the Vulture could have microed away as well. The Mutalisks are already out though. The 2-hatch Mutalisk timing is very early. As we see now, it comes out before the 6-minute mark, arriving at the Terran base at around 6:05. This is indeed a very fast Mutalisk timing, and it arrives well before the fact that there is any anti-air defense, and part of that must stem from the fact that it did such a great job defending its main base from scouting SCVs, scouting information. The turrets do manage to go up, but with just 2 turrets, it might not be enough. The 1 Mutalisk does go down. The Flock is getting injured. A lot of SCVs going down, though. Another Mutalisk goes down. This turret is not going to be completed. The Starport is getting denied as well, and that is going to spell doom for Ironbot, who's now down to 9 workers. Can't help but feel that maybe having 2 of those SCVs trapped on the outside and 2 of them preventing run-bys hurt its early economy so greatly that now it basically has no economy whatsoever. It did manage to get 1 Wraith out, get those 3 turrets up, but now it doesn't have the economy to produce units, and with this economic advantage, McRave is sure to snowball out. One thing that McRave wanted to point out about this is the fact that the the Mutalisks did a better job of ignoring the vultures until there were no better targets. What sometimes happens in AI games, as we've seen in many games throughout our previous broadcasts, is that units can just focus on what would be objectively considered the wrong thing to focus on. For example, in this scenario, the Mutalisks are chasing down a couple of vultures here. That is not the most effective use of their time when there is a full base of SCVs. In this case, when there's no more SCVs and in fact there's 0 workers and not enough money to produce any more workers, it is of course makes more sense to chase down those vultures. But in the initial timing, it's important to arrive at the mineral line as soon as possible with the Mutalisks. And programming the AI in order to recognize that fact is going to produce good results, as we saw here for the 2-hatch Mutalisk play. So yeah, a great play from McRave here, demonstrating the efficacy of 2-hatch Mutalisks, and with demonstrating the greater ability to prioritize targets in the early game here, led to pretty much a dismantling of Ironbot here. You have to also consider the fact that 2 factory vultures without getting any return on that investment also slows down your build and your potential to make anti-air. If it had suspected a 2-hatch Mutalisk build, perhaps it could have gone straight into Goliaths after the first vulture. And of course we have to remember the fact that McRave did a fantastic job of blocking this vulnerable area with the Zerglings, preventing the vulture run by from coming in when it did. So this game is pretty much over, but yeah, fantastic play from both AI here. Thank you for the submission. Moving on to the next replay, we have a replay submitted by TSC Moo. It wasn't actually recommended for a broadcast, I did that myself. TSC Moo was talking about how they might have found a way to abuse Stardust's, Stardust of course being the #1 ranked AI, the consecutive winner of multiple tournaments over the past year, possibly the AI to beat right now. It's spawning at the top right here as the purple Protoss, and TSC Moo spawning at the bottom left as the red Terran. So this replay was put up as a way of possibly dismantling Stardust long term. Something that would be quite interesting for, I'm guessing, the bot author Bruce, the author of Stardust, and for the rest of us in the scene too, to see the evolution, to see the #1 AI, a weakness in the #1 AI's play that can be exploited by other AI. So this one was, this replay rather, was submitted in a discussion channel, and I moved it to the recommended replays channel. So I am aware of what's going to happen. I did view it briefly, but that was a couple weeks ago, so I don't remember exactly what, so I hope I will still be able to bring that same energy to this broadcast. As we see here, the gateway cybernetics core, very standard stuff from Stardust. It often goes into a 3 or 4 gate macro play off of one base, sometimes even 5 gateways, which the bot author has said that it is an error. Here we see the second gateway coming up already at 21 supply. This is a very standard Dragoon heavy build order, 10-21 gate, and another pylon coming up in time to not get supply blocked. Let's get that production tab back up. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. There we go. And yeah, this is going up to 3 gateways now off of one base. Is going to be heavy Dragoon play, which a lot of AI have struggled to deal with. Marines, of course, don't fare that well against Dragoons, even when they're up on top of the ramp. We do see a 2 factory play, and I wonder if it was an intentional way of hiding the second factory in case there was a scouting probe that ever got in here. 2 fact Vulture against 3 Gateway Dragoon into a Nexus, so this isn't a completely all-in play from Stardust, something that we have grown to expect from this AI. It looks like the Dragoons tried to poke up, and they did take out 1 Marine here. It looks like mines are being laid down as well, and this is sort of what we were promised by TSC Moo. It's the mines are a way of defending against the damage that can be inflicted by a Dragoon heavy build, and the Dragoons, perhaps recognizing the fact that they don't have any observers to detect the mines, are now aggressing against the Terran player. Mines being laid very quickly, by the way, by the Vultures. They're doing it's a technique that is known in the human world, and it's when you press the you predict the movement of the Vulture after it lays the first mine, and you can actually lay a second mine immediately afterwards, very close to the first one, and it has forced Stardust all the way back with what would normally be an inferior fighting force in terms of head-to-head combat. But because of the fact that there's no observers for Stardust, because it invested so heavily into getting those 3 gateways, the Dragoons, and the Nexus up. It delays your robotics facility. The Observatory just coming up now, and the Dragoons are being spread all over a little bit, stepping onto mines. This could be a big blast here. Yeah, all those Dragoons are injured now. The Vulture count is high. They're trying to sneak in from all sides. Look at this beautiful arc on the minimap here that is being created by the units of TSC Mu. It's forcing Stardust to kind of stay locked into this position because it can't afford to go too far forward, losing a ton of Dragoons there to that Spider Mine, and now the snowball effect of Vultures is pushing the Dragoons all the way back into the main base, actually, and probes are going down at the natural. This is going to lead to huge economic damage for Stardust here, as it loses so many probes that it's almost equal to the Terran player, now lower than the Terran player, and the Dragoons, they don't feel confident enough to push down in. I think in terms of numbers, there's more than enough here, but now, especially with an observer, but the AI just doesn't seem to handle the interaction properly. It doesn't read the battle the way that it could be read. I believe that this is definitely a sufficient number of Dragoons to push out with. Perhaps it's still scared because of the fact that it knows that a ton of Marines are behind this, which I think is also an interesting addition. I believe that the reason for this, it's something that you almost never see in Terran vs Protoss, and here we see that Stardust has apparently GG'd, or perhaps the replay ended manually. However, I want to talk briefly about this. Marines are not very good in TVP, especially early game, especially without medic support. However, I believe that the backbone of the strategy from TSC Mu is the fact that you have 3 production facilities, right? You have the barracks and you have the 2 factories, and eventually it seems that it went up to 4 factories. The Marines are just there to add more firepower and to hit a timing when there's not enough Dragoons to contest both the Marines and the Vultures, even though the Marines themselves are not that great against the Dragoons. So it's a really intelligent approach to this situation where they expect Stardust to have a large army, and you need to have enough army to sort of push it back, apply pressure, and gain map control using mines before an observer timing from Stardust. So it worked out perfectly here. TSC Mu, of course, did want to let us know that this is a build of Stardust that they have on their own computer. There might have been some evolutions to Stardust since that since this game was played, and the build that is most current is probably not the one that TSC Mu played against. However, it is kind of a proof of concept of something that is potentially possible, at least against the Stardust that has been dominating the scene for the past, I believe, around 9 months now. So yeah, thank you for the submission. Technically, it was very interesting to watch, and of course something that I'm going to consider in my games against Stardust this week. Moving on to the next game, still on the topic of Stardust, who's spawning here at the top right of Fighting Spirit. And it's me at the bottom left as the orange Terran. I wanted to show you guys a quick preview of some of the craziness that might happen in the best of 7 series that I'll be playing this upcoming week. Now, I'm going to put all my excuses out right from the rip. Not a Terran main. I just thought that it might be the race that I have the best chances of beating Stardust consistently with. Second of all, this game, it was the only game I played in about a month, maybe a couple weeks, if we're going to be completely honest. So you guys are going to see some sloppy play. I'm going to prepare you for it right away, but sloppy play does leave the door open for Stardust to do some damage and to exert its force on me here. Now, because I did see this replay, well, I played it. I'm going to try to examine mostly the play of Stardust to look at the things that it does well, as opposed to looking at my play and the things that I do poorly. So Stardust got its scouting probe in. This is a very early scout for PvT. Generally in human play, you don't scout all that early at all in PvT, because if you're opening Dragoons especially, there's very little that the Terran can do that would jeopardize your early game position. There are some barracks supply depot BBS builds that are potentially dangerous, but with proper micro ramp control on maps like Fighting Spirit and potentially using shield batteries, this is not that great of a concern as a Protoss player. The one thing you're usually concerned about is if maybe Terran got too greedy, and then you can adjust your build to try to punish that if the Terran goes for something like a Rax FE or a 14 command center build or 15 command center build. So in this case, the Terran, aka me, is not going for anything too crazy. I'm going for a very standard siege expand. I'm waiting on producing the Marines until after the command center is finished, I tried to scout Stardust, even though I am quite aware of what Stardust may likely be doing. I was not aware that I would go for a 3 gateway Nexus build here. I was expecting more of the 4 gateway play that we've seen so far. So Stardust has evolved quite a bit. And again, a quick reminder that this is also not the build that I will be playing against. The build that I'll be playing against was sort of customized for this specific show match, and Antigua Irion did let us know that there will indeed be some learning involved in the build. So now I have my first 2 siege tanks out, and I'm going to try to claim my natural. My general approach to this matchup right now, specifically my Terran against Stardust, is have enough siege tanks to try to melt their whole army in one blow, and don't worry too much about trying to keep up in macro. I'm just going to try to abuse Stardust's the moments when Stardust doesn't make the optimal decisions in terms of army engagement. Now, Stardust is going up to 3 bases, potentially as a response to the fact that it sees me on 2 bases, and in general as a response to the fact that it doesn't seem to be doing damage with its 4 gateway Dragoon. It is a much more macro-oriented play from Stardust than what we have seen in the past, and especially against other AI. A lot of its wins coming from very heavy 1 base focused play, expanding later into the game than normal in this matchup especially. But I have a nice spread of siege tanks now, and I'm feeling pretty confident about my ability to hold this natural position. My goal is to get double upgrades running, and let me bring up that production tab so we can see the insane production from Stardust that's going to be coming in shortly. Maybe move that a little bit better. There we go. No, that didn't work. Yeah, this is that thing that I've seen, that we've all seen Nightcat struggle with. No, it's blocking the mini-map now. Alright, let's see, maybe like this. Okay, that's good enough. Alright, so I'm going for double upgrades on my armories, and I'm going for a fast science facility here to start getting those higher level upgrades. And my goal is basically to just make enough siege tanks, as I said before, to melt the entirety of Stardust army. Stardust in the meantime is taking more bases now, which is very good heads up play. It's taking map control because it sees that I'm being so passive, and it's actually adding zealots already. Zealots are crucial for busting defensive positions of Terran. It's adding more gateways. It has its citadel up. It's most likely getting, or already has, speed. Looks like speed is on the way. It's almost done. And now Stardust is well known for the fact that it is kind of more or less at this moment stuck on 1.5 tech, which is Dragoons and Zealots. Speed, no Templar, no Arbiters, and I'm trying to, and in general, Protoss ground army loses to Terran army with no supporting spellcasters like Arbiters or High Templar. So my goal is to basically have enough siege tanks to just melt the entirety of the army. Now, this is a key moment because I'm trying to take my 3rd base, and this is a kind of a greedy 3rd base. And look at Stardust. It recognized immediately that there was not enough army here in order to control this choke, even the fact that I have bunker, and my reaction was also kind of late as well. So it managed to bust in through my natural, and now I'm in a tough spot because my siege tanks back here that I was sending to the 3rd base to claim it are not in a good position to combat head-to-head against this Protoss army. And look at the production from Stardust. Incredible production. It's going to be incredibly difficult for me to hold on to this position, and I actually have to forfeit my natural here. My worker count is lower than Stardust already. Stardust at 75 workers. I'm at 57. I'm using the SCVs to try to hold on to my ramp. And at this point, you can imagine I'm feeling quite under pressure. I only have 4 siege tanks, 8 army against 52. Luckily for me, Stardust is not aware of this expansion here. I did make some turrets to try to stave off any observers, but I have no army there to defend it, and this is one of the few things that is keeping me alive at this point. The siege tank count is slowly climbing up, and I'm going to try to retake my natural, and it's actually quite crucial that I do so because my main is basically run out of money. I'm trying to use the hug the wall, but look at Stardust approach. It comes in and snipes all those siege tanks, knowing that the losses are not going to affect it as badly as they affect me. I'm at 12 army supply against 76. It's definitely quite a bad situation to be in. Also very gas starved because of the fact that I went for such a gas heavy build, going for double upgrades very early on, getting that science facility very early, getting a science vessel even for detection, even though I know that there's not going to be any Dark Templar. Thankfully though, the high ground protection on Fighting Spirit lending itself nicely to my position here. I'm even repairing here because Stardust has managed to get a few pot shots off. And this is a situation where we can see that Stardust is perhaps not recognizing the threat adequately and perhaps reaching that APM cap that is often in place. That's when you see those Dragoons jittering like that. They're not sure where to go. They're getting sent a lot of conflicting commands at once. And because of the fact that I'm so desperately starved for for gas, I'm actually going into Marine Medic to try to add more, how should I say, like meat shield for my siege tanks now. And now I'm the one that is using mines, and as you can see, the reaction from Stardust has been to fall back. No observers present at this location, and basically this is this is a situation that is beneficial to me, but I can't seem to get my siege tank count going, and I managed to secure my natural more or less. Still not completely secure, to be honest with you, right on time as my main base is mining out. Now, I do want to note that Stardust has continued to expand. It's taken its 5th base, but it hasn't quite taken the whole map. At this point, it definitely has the potential and the money in order to take the entire map, which would mean long-term success for it. One thing that you want to do as Protoss is take as much of the map as possible, especially the expansions that the Terran is likely to take. That way, they have less money to fall back on, because Terran survives based on the fact that it is more cost-effective. And huge mine explosions and siege tanks shots here from from me. Sorry, I so used to talking about other AI doing stuff. Well, I am human. All right, I didn't mean other AI. That you guys know what I'm talking about. Anyway, look, looks like it was trying to mine drag my Marines and medics here, but it just didn't get that adequate pop. The Marines and medics doing a surprisingly good job of holding and supporting the siege tanks, using the fact that there's so many targets, perhaps. In the meantime, I tried to do something sneaky. I tried to do a proxy factory here to try to do some damage to the economy of Stardust. And Stardust is still continuing to pressure me. I'm still keeping my siege tanks count low, but now that I'm adding Vulture's mines and I have more Marines and medics, Stardust thinks the better of it and does fall back. Now, as you can see, there's been tremendous pressure from Stardust throughout this, and Stardust is now finally taking the other expansion on the map, perhaps a bit later than you would normally want to. Let's keep an eye out on this and see how Stardust chooses to engage. You can see that it's running right on top of the tanks. It did get a mine drag, I think, a little bit, but it did lose quite a lot of army. It has taken out all of my Marines, though. But now the siege tanks are in sufficient number to keep this army pinned back. 37 army supply against 67, and with this kind of layout, I'm keeping Stardust in a position where it's taking bad trades. Now, I finally completed some military here, enough to at least pressure this expansion. And unfortunately, it's not going to be enough. Stardust did a great job of sending just enough army here to stop this flow of, well, stop this damage from getting worse. But it is continuing to lose Dragoons here in the natural. I'm basically fighting for my life here to an extent. I do have, you can see I have a lot of idle SCVs. This is the imperfection of human play. Worker count 59 against 75. 59 workers is about the most that you can probably support on 2 bases. And at this point, I'm just basically assuming that Stardust has most of the rest of the map, and it is getting to that point where Stardust is starting to take most of the map. However, Stardust, it doesn't seem like it recognized that this is one of the weaknesses of AI. It didn't think, where did that army come from? It knows that I don't have, I mean, it could suspect that I have dropships, I guess, but I don't. It's because of this proxy factory. Usually when a sizable force just suddenly appears in your expansion, you want to check the corners to see if there's been a proxy of some sort as a human player. But as an AI, I can understand how this is a very complicated thing to code for. The thing to recognize, you know, what are the criteria that would lead you to suspect that there's a justification for hurting your economy and scouting the corners of your base. How often do you want to scout the corners of your base, so on and so forth. But now the army counts are starting to even out as my siege tank count grows. My upgrades are also 3-3 is coming in. Stardust is at 3-3 already. And yeah, so now this pure Dragoon force really doesn't seem to be handling this pure siege tank force all that quite well. We've seen this before in replays. I believe it was Cinders that played TVP on Heartbreak Ridge. I believe the the video name is A Hope for Humanity. It's one of the previous SSCAIT broadcasts that I recorded. Do recommend you check it out, where Cinders did a similar approach on Heartbreak Ridge, just a very heavy siege tank count in order to combat the heavy Dragoon count from Stardust, but as you can tell, I'm still very cautious in moving forward. Part of the reason why is because now my natural is running out of minerals, and this base is not very high in minerals either. So I do desperately need to expand at some point soon, and in order to expand, I need to have a healthy army count in order to claim the territory. Now, my two options are expanding to the north, where I have some military presence already due to the presence of these factories and mines and siege tanks doing a good job of holding this ramp for me here. Or my other option is to try to take this base here by slowly inching out of my base. I do opt for this instead. I find that it is easier because I do have more production in this area. I have 4 factories back home, only 3 factories over here, but I am managing to hold on to this for now. Should be noted that Stardust is on 4 bases, has mined out 4 bases already. This base is almost mined out as well. That's another consideration to keep in mind when you're deciding which base to take. Stardust, however, it seems that the fatal flaw in its play here was not recognizing that I have this base. This base basically kept me alive and in the game for a long time. Now I'm going to try to carefully push out into this wide open area. And it's almost like Stardust knows when I unsiege my siege tank, so that's when it seems to come in and try to apply pressure. I am slowly inching my way forward and trying to claim this territory on the map. And it's a very slow and arduous process because I'm a human player. I don't have infinite multitasking potential, and now I'm trying to take this base as well. I believe that this should be a command center that I'm building here. Yeah, the only thing I'm producing at this time, because if my money is here, but my income is soon to be close to 0, so another imperfection of human play is the fact that I don't have the multitasking to produce constantly. As you can see, I was also supply blocked, I believe, for a little bit there. I think I was at 164, at 164. Maybe I'm mistaken, but maybe it's just bad macro. I'm looking around here, seeing if there's any economic damage I can get, looking to take this expansion at some point as well. Stardust sending probes here to try to expand again. Stardust now taking the rest of the map that is available, but by clearing out this base and this base, I do have the next kind of step in my potential economic situation. And again, this is becoming dire because I'm running out of money here. And I really want to stress how hard it is to move out against Stardust when it can just dive in and take siege tanks. You have to be super careful, and the process of leapfrogging your siege tanks is a very long and arduous one for a human player. I can't leapfrog the way that AI do. And here we go. Now with some zealots, it's thinking about running in. I did unsiege quite a few of my siege tanks. It sniffed that out. Looks like it's going to try to run in. It did take out quite a number of siege tanks, but it also lost a lot of its own army as well. And yeah, so now I'm still struggling to move out of this choke point area, because this is where Stardust will get the greatest round. Now, at this point, I just desperation send my SCVs through during engagement because I need to start mining again. I do have money, but not all that much. I am building another command center, and I'm taking this mostly mined out base here as well. Stardust, however, still continuing to focus on this army presence that I have here. Again, Stardust does have 3 mining bases, basically the last relatively untouched bases on the map. The middle, interestingly enough, not being taken by Stardust. That's something that you will often see from Protoss, and it's also a base that Terrans sometimes take in TVP because of its proximity to its production facilities in the main base, and the proximity to the natural, of course. But in this situation, as you can tell by the fact that this command center has been floating here for a couple minutes now, more than a couple most likely, is the fact that it's still incredibly tough for me to get any map control. I mean, because of the fact that Stardust has had a booming economy for so much longer than me, they've been able to they're more willing to take trades than I am, because even though the trades are usually much better for me, the amount of money that Stardust has access to is also much greater than mine. As you can see, I've basically mined out this base. This is my only income at this point, and I'm destroying this depot so I can get my units out, my SCVs out, to start mining these bases again. My mineral count, as you can tell, is incredibly low. Army supply is still behind of Stardust, but I've managed to slowly inch my way into this position here. And I think part of the contributing factor of this is the fact that Stardust is actually running low on money itself now, with only 2 real mining bases left. This one being the only one that's has any sizable amount of minerals remaining, and that's the base that I'm actually going to look to take for myself because of its proximity to my production facilities, as I mentioned before. Again, almost pure siege tank production and pure siege tanks doing well against almost pure Dragoons here, and Stardust looking for a moment to dive, but unfortunately recognizing that maybe that was not the opportune moment. These kind of dives that are not assisted by information from observers are what's really keeping me in this game, is the fact that I'm constantly costing Stardust money, and Stardust hasn't been maxed for a very long time. And that's partially because of the fact that it continues to try to engage in situations where it probably should not. I'm continuously picking off idle Dragoons that are venturing a little bit too closer to my siege tank position. A lot of the Dragoons are weakened because they took some extra shots, and now I'm finally keeping a very nice siege tank line here as I make my way towards this expansion. I do want to get there quickly though, because of the fact that there is, again, money is running out on the map. I'm still not in a position to control the center. I did manage to set up this expansion, but this is not a very strong force to hold it with, and again, I can't produce all that much more army because of the fact that my income is so limited as well. And now Stardust, this is a really interesting move that I want to talk about. First of all, I walked over the mines. That's something that we have seen already, but it decided, no, I can't take that army, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to destroy the expansions here. And I've run the SCVs out, or desperately tried to, but the Dragoons, they chase down the SCVs, and you can see my worker count plummet to 20 here, 18 now, and Stardust takes out this base, or is very close to doing so. I only have one siege tank, two siege tanks, two vultures here, and again, I can't produce. Now my income is 0. I don't have any money, so this was a pivotal play by Stardust here. If this works out, I'm in big trouble, basically. And it did manage to take the last siege tank out, and is going to clear this up. Now, this opens the ability for Stardust to take this expansion now, with this probe that it has here. However, the problem is that at the very same time, I took down Stardust's last mining base. So I'm really holding on by just like a hair. I instantly wall up here, and we're both at incredibly low workers. So now if Stardust has any hope of taking another base, it would be only by ninja mining, as it's called, or long distance mining from this mineral patch or this mineral patch, and bring it all the way home, and then getting 400 minerals to place a nexus either in the middle or out this base, and not this base because I already mined it out. So this was, I want to say, almost a lucky win for me, and you can see how tough it is for me to fight against Stardust, even though I am abusing the fact that I know very well that it only stays on Dragoon and Zealot tech, which I hope is going to remain to be the case in my upcoming fights, because I can't imagine doing very well against Stardust if it has access to shuttles, arbiters, and Templar, but we will see what happens. So basically at this point, I'm still incredibly scared because I don't know if Stardust has retaken this expansion or not. I don't know if it has taken this expansion or not. I'm now scanning, and I see the fact that, yeah, it's basically stopped producing army, and now I have enough army to basically 1A, 2A, 3A over Stardust face and claim victory in a very ugly, ugly way. Something that I'm not very proud of, but should show you that the potential that Stardust and the series between Stardust and I can go, I think, at this point, basically either way, and it's going to be incredibly interesting to see what Stardust has in store for us for that series. Well, at least what Bruce has in store for us, the creator of Stardust, for the best of 7 series that I'm going to be facing off against them in. I was actually wondering when I was playing this game, why did Stardust not take this base, and I didn't realize that was because it didn't have the money anymore, because I took this base at almost the same time. So that pivotal turning point, of course, led to my victory here. Stardust now completely mined out, has one army supply. I believe it has to be an observer in that case. I think that's like the only Protoss unit that is one supply and could be considered army. Of course, the other one supply unit being the probe. So now I'm just basically cleaning up shop here. Yeah, that's the observer right there. And yeah, I'm going to basically just steamroll over this with my massive 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A army of just pure siege tanks almost. And yeah, that's the game. So I do hope you guys tune in to the best of 7 series that I'll be playing against Stardust. Again, more information on that will be coming. Maybe it will be mentioned in the next broadcast by Nightcat, and it will definitely be mentioned in the SSCAIT Discord. The information for which, the link for which we have in the description below. Now, I am going to move on to what will likely be the last game of the day. Sorry in advance for the shorter broadcast. I do have some pressing time issues here. I am running close to the deadline for submission for this broadcast. This is another game I played, and this is part of 3 games that I played in a row against Steamhammer, which is another AI in the Schnell ladder, and of course participating in other SSCAIT and other events. It's a pretty strong Zerg bot. To kind of give you a preface on my situation going into this series, is that I had won about maybe 20, 25, something like that, games in a row. As I was climbing back up the Schnell ladder, what happened was that a lot of the games that didn't get submitted, the points for which were refunded, and as a result, I dropped from something like 1700 or 1600 LO ranking to about 1000, which put me at nearly at the very bottom of the ranking. So I had to work my way up through all of the AI, from the weaker ones to the stronger ones, and this is when I started getting to the stronger ones with Steamhammer. Um, and but I'm full of confidence at this point. This is game 2 of our series, if you want to call it that, because I matched up against it 3 times in a row, and I won the previous game quite handily. So I decided to go for a build that I love to play on Python, and I love to play in general in PvZ. It's a bit risky, it's a bit difficult, it's very heavy on multitasking, which my multitasking is not that great at the moment. um, I'm scouting for expansions here. Look at that probe micro. I'm good. Nope, never mind. The Zerglings do a great job of picking me off. I was suspecting that there might be an expansion here because I did see a drone walk out. Anyway, the build that I'm going for is one base Sair Reaver. Now, the reason why this build works quite well on Python is due to a number of factors. First of all, there is that high ground choke that we have here. So Reavers are great when positioned on that. You can defend with a couple of Zealots, a Dragoon, maybe a couple of Cannons, and that is enough defense to hold off a huge tide of Zerg army. I try to take down this Overlord, but I don't think I'll be successful if I remember correctly. Yeah, it wandered right outside my range. But my Stargate is up, and I'm going to start using it to make a Corsair. Now, the Corsair is useful because of the fact that it comes out way earlier than a lot of Zergs anticipate, because you're again doing it off of one base. The Sair is going to, I believe I'm going to pick off this Overlord first, maybe. I'm struggling to decide what oh no, I was looking for it. Yep, I pick it off. That does almost supply cap Steamhammer here. And now I get to see information on what is going on inside the base of Steamhammer. I see that there's an evolution chamber, perhaps in response to my Sair, which I don't think is the optimal response, to be honest with you. You do, the Spore Colony will benefit you, but when you're on only 2 bases like this, I don't think it's worth it. You generally hold off one base Corsair pressure with just the Hydralisks that you have available to you. Now, the other reason why this build works well on Python is because of the fact that by getting a shuttle, you open up the possibility of taking these island expansions. Now, there is a mineral blocking here, so you can't float a command center to it, but because of the fact that I'm going shuttles with my Reavers to try to do economic damage, you can take the island expansion quite early, and that way you don't really have to defend it against a heavy ground presence. Now, after confirming the fact that there were no Mutalisks being produced, there is a Spire coming up now. I believe I'm going to find out about that soon. I am trying to, yep, I scout it here, and I'm like, oh crap, because this is one of the weaknesses of the one base Sair Reaver build, is that you don't have a lot of gas off of one gas, and you spent a lot of it on getting the robotics, the Reaver, and the shuttle speed, which you need in order to micro your shuttle Reaver. So now I have to add cannons to defend against Scourge. Now I have to start considering adding more Sairs and possibly getting +1 air attack in order to defend. So I tried to apply pressure here. I missed that, I'm sorry, but basically I dropped some Reavers here to try to take out this third base from Steamhammer, but it didn't work out. One of the things that you can't afford to do is hemorrhage your Reaver count with this build, especially against AI, which have amazing macro and multitasking. I do drop some probes here, but I am worried about the fact that there is now Mutalisks out, so I'm adding Sairs to combat against the Mutalisks. Of course, the Mutalisk micro is going to be great for AI as well. Not choosing to apply any pressure yet, perhaps worried about the presence of my cannons and the Corsairs that I have available. In the meantime, adding more Scourge. Looks like these were just going to be made to be used defensively, and now it looks like we're going into Hive Tech. Now, this is a move that I did not expect. Usually against one base Sair Reaver, you will see human players opt to go for much more expansion heavy play, staying in layer tech for a long time and taking a lot of bases. Now I'm cautiously moving out. I'm using this high ground pylon to make cannons on the low ground and to kind of establish my position so I can go up to 3 bases. And my hope is eventually to, with Sair Reaver, is to have enough Sairs with enough disruption webs and enough Reavers to just basically destroy bases with impunity. no matter what is there, because of the fact that the Sayers fare well against air army and the Reavers fare incredibly well against ground army. I'm trying to find a spot where I can harass this. Now look at this. Look at those burrowed drones. The drones just, they're like, nope, I'm out. And now, in order to do any real economic damage, I have to bring observers with me. And every time I move out somewhere with my shuttle, I risk the fact that I don't have enough defense at the front. So I have to. I can't stay in one place for too long, and I've already lost 2 Reavers here to the Hydralisk before. And now there's Scourge out patrolling, looking for my shuttles, and this is just fantastic play from Steamhammer. This is definitely a challenging situation for me, but I'm still feeling pretty confident. I do have 2 air upgrades on the way, and what you can sometimes follow Sail Reaver up with is carrier play. Something that I anticipated would work well against Steamhammer in this situation. Meanwhile, Steamhammer is getting ground Zergling upgrades. You see the air carapace coming in as well, which is a fantastic upgrade against air heavy Protoss. I do have 2 Reavers now. I have plenty of Sayers, and I'm trying to, I believe I'm now going to try to expand my economy to this location here. You can almost treat these bases as like semi-island bases because of the fact that you do have these chokes, which is again why this build works on this map. It's definitely not a pro level build, but it can get you to at least, I want to say, B or A rank in the ladder if you use it only on appropriate maps. The Fighting Spirit is a great map for it as well. But the army count and the economy, I am advantaged in both, but Protoss, of course, generally is, especially at this stage of the game. Now the Zerg looking for my Scourge, I'm sorry, for my Sayers yet again, but my Sayers run away. Mutalisks ran in at the perfect time, perhaps noticing the fact that my Sayers were out of place, tried to take out some army here. Oh, Scourge are now trailing me as well. And I'm just sick of these Mutalisks, so I just stick around to try to kill all of them, and I do so, but I do lose a lot of my Corsair as well. And again, Corsair are important for that disruption web, so losing them means also losing all the energy that they've built up. And yeah, so not a great move from me, I believe. Definitely could have been more conservative. I do have a great amount of defense, though. Lots of Reavers, shuttles, Sayers here, but now this is where things start getting dangerous. This is when the Defilers come out, and this is the moment where I'm like, oh no, because Plague is a basically free way to lower the health of all Protoss units to half. Grateful for the shields, but shields do take max damage from everything, and there's even Queens now out for Steamhammer, and Steamhammer looking to take the rest of the map, even trying to take the natural of the expansion that I had just taken. And it looks like it's keeping tabs on other bases as well. So I'm still confident at this point. I still think that I can do this, but for some reason my economy, like despite the fact that I have a pretty healthy worker count with 55, I am now behind in economy, and these Plagues are definitely worrying me. Zerglings and Defilers. With Dark Swarm, they could fare well, but I do still have the Reavers here. I take the risk and I take a couple of Reavers away because I'm thinking about taking out some bases now. There are Mutalisks out as well, so I need to keep tabs on that. There's Hydras and Zerglings patrolling extra bases. Economy is an expansion from Steamhammer here, and I just think that I'm kind of like, I had my foot off the gas for too long here. I'm trying to, instead of using my Reavers to do damage, I got disheartened by the interactions I had here, I think, so I opted not to continue doing that. And the Plagues are consistently falling on these units. Perhaps it would behoove Steamhammer to recognize the fact that all of these buildings are already plagued and more plagues will not be beneficial. And here I look at this, Ensnare and Plague, and that's going to impact my ability to move around greatly. The Sayers are now going to fire faster, weakening them against Mutalisks, and now I'm taking the risk and I'm flying away with all my Reavers, leaving this base almost undefended. I dropped them here. I managed to take out this hatchery, and this is the idea behind this build, but look at what happens in response. Steamhammer's like, oh, okay, you took out one of my bases. I'm gonna just completely Shrek your base. And even though I had a Reaver there, it clearly wasn't enough, and I lose that expansion, and that's crucial for me, because now I'm only down to 3 mining bases, with this one barely even being considered a mining base at this time. My carriers are out, but they get played instantly. Reavers are going to be able to hold off the tide of Zerglings here, and I'm going to be able to reclaim my natural, but again, this is not ideal for me. I lost a lot of cannons, I lost a lot of probes there. I'm down to 44 workers now against the 74 of Steamhammer, who has basically the rest of the map. I do have one Zealot, interestingly, here, and for some reason it's just letting me pummel this, but there are Zerglings now out. My Zealots are completely unupgraded because I've been going for Sarah Reaver with carriers, and it's becoming difficult for me at this point to basically keep my foothold in the game. I do have a good defensive position here and here, but I can't ever seem to have enough to go out and do damage, or consistent damage against Steamhammer. As you can see here, it's willing to just throw away army because of the fact that its economy is so fantastic, and because of the fact that my economy is not so fantastic. And look at that, another plague on the carriers, well done, and it's even going to snipe one. My Sair count is way too low. I was focused on producing carriers to hopefully reclaim this base, because the Sairs, they don't attack the ground. So now I'm still hoping for an opportunity to be aggressive here at some point soon. Still have plenty of Reavers, but now the Mulisks coming in, and they're going to actually start trying to pick off these Reavers, and I actually lose a lot of Reavers just to Zerglings and Hydralisks, and again, I can't seem to snowball a sufficient army despite having 98 army supply, where I can go out and take out bases. I only have enough to hold on to the bases that I already have. I do have 2 healthily mining bases and 1 that is going to be hopefully mining soon, and here I try to move out. Here's my Sair carriers. The carriers get immediately sniped when I wasn't paying attention. The Sairs were distracted by the Mutalisks, and the carriers go down, and that's a huge loss for me. I don't think I even realized that. I just came back and I'm like, wait, where are my carriers? And this Muta Zergling, like, just mass army is a good response to Sair Reaver. I mean, generally what you would normally see is Hydralisks being burrowed around the map from human players to snipe the shuttles, but in this case, just having a ton of Zerglings, even against a healthy Reaver count, you're going to start accruing damage, and here I am trying to take down another base. Unfortunately, the shuttles get taken out. Plague again. Mutalisk count is too high for my Sairs to deal with, and with the Sairs going down here, the Reavers are undefended against the Mutalisks, and the counter push is now on for Steamhammer here. Steamhammer going to try to take out this natural, which I still haven't been able to start mining from. Mutalisks are going to potentially target these exposed Reavers again, and I'm just struggling really badly to establish a foothold here. Perhaps Carrier was not the right answer against AI that can split their Scourge to snipe them so effectively, and especially when I don't have the sufficient Corsair count. And now I'm just desperately trying to pump out enough army to hold this natural, but I can't. The Mulisks are going to take down the Reavers now because I don't have any cannons or anti-air here. Sair count is low, and I'm producing carriers, I believe, from these Stargates, and or at least I was. I maybe canceled them to produce the Sairs that I need to hold on to this expansion, but again, my income is just not there to continuously to hold on to this base, and when I lose this base, if I lose all my production and tech, I'm in a really tough bind now. And I mean, the bases that I've taken out, Steamhammer has been able to reclaim, or at least it doesn't need to anymore. This base basically didn't have anything going for it, and now my main falls. Steamhammer is everywhere on the map, and I'm feeling very, very disheartened about my chances here, as this base is starting to run lower on minerals. This base is healthily mining, but now there's Ultralisks out on the map, and I don't have Reavers in production here. The Reaver goes down, and there's basically nothing I don't have an army anymore. I only have 2 supply of army, and the Ultralisk Zergling army is going to overrun me. Look at the production tab from Steamhammer here. It takes up half of my screen, and this is where I tap out. Fantastic play from Steamhammer here. And yeah, that's about it. That was my first loss on the Schnell ladder in the past month or so. Yeah, it was a wake-up call. Do want to let you know that I did win the next game by playing a little bit more standard on Empire of the Sun. That's not really, I shouldn't treat it as much of as such a prideful thing, but I did get my revenge. So I do wanted to let you know that I did win the series 2-1, but either way, fantastic play from Steamhammer here. Very, very scary stuff. Great base management, great recognition of when to push in and bust my locations. The drone burrowing and defensive expansions that prevented me from doing any sustainable damage to it, very nicely done there as well. And yeah, so when don't recommend this build for facing against Steamhammer or many of the AIs, because it is quite taxing. Well, with that, I am going to bid you all a adieu. Sorry. Uh, I hope you guys enjoy this broadcast. I hope you guys come to our Discord, which I'll be linking in the description below. And I hope you guys tune in for my show match against Stardust, which will be coming up in the near future. This has been Show with Swaggins, aka Jealous, with an SSCAIT report. I hope you all have a wonderful day, a wonderful week. I hope that you guys find success, happiness, and health. And yeah, take care. Hope to see you next time.